He's a veteran here at Craft, and we keep coming. We want him to come back because he always has a lot of good insights to share. So he does a lot of speaking, a lot of writing. He coaches CTOs, but you'll hear that more from him. Today he's going to be talking about as software engineers, we want to deliver good quality software that is reliable, flexible, and pretty much, or what we should be always striving is to solve customer problems. So Randy Shoup, please join the stage and take it away.
Great, thanks, Jose. All right, yeah. So today, for your last talk at 2021 Craft, happy to be here to talk about improving customer flow. My only sadness, frankly, is I'm not joining you in Budapest. So next year, we hope. A little bit of my background. So I'm currently VP of Engineering and Chief Architect at eBay. I've also spent time as an engineering leader at Google, at Stitch Fix, and at WeWork. And so a bunch of the lessons that we're going to talk about today are from all of those different places. So I want to frame the talk by talking about the 5 ideals. So the 5 ideals are an idea that Gene Kim came up with in his excellent book, The Unicorn Project. So please go read that when you have a chance, if you have not done it already. And his 5 ideals are locality and simplicity, focus, flow, and joy, the improvement of daily work, psychological safety, and customer focus. And we're just going to go through each of them individually and talk about some learnings that we can have from each of them. So first, let's start off with locality and simplicity. Modern, high-performance organizations are, even at large scale, are made up of small individual autonomous teams, right? So rather than having there's some big, product team that throws huge amounts of work over the wall to some big, development team, which throws huge amount of code over the wall to some operations team, et cetera, et cetera. Instead, what we've learned over time is that the best performing organizations, the Googles, the Amazons, the Netflixes of the world, organize large organizations out of small independent teams. And within the bounds of those teams, they have all the capabilities that they need to get the job done. The idea people, which we might call product, the developers, quality assurance, operations, and those don't have to be separate people, but all those roles and all those responsibilities are within the bounds of the team. And we do that so we can iterate quickly. And one of the things that makes that possible is that we marry the architecture of our software with the structure or the organization that we have. So typically, we have one domain, one team, and each individual team owns one or maybe a small number of services and applications. And this is directly an application of Conway's Law. Mel Conway has been a speaker at Craft in the past, great person. And the idea is essentially that the organization and architecture should be duals of each other. They should be reflections of each other, or else they're not going to work very well. And so what does that mean for when I'm inside the team? I mean, that means that that within the team, I should have both autonomy and accountability. So within the team boundary, I should be independently designing, developing, deploying, and operating my software. And I should be owning that software end to end. And also I should be accountable for, the business results of that software. This is the locality part of the locality and simplicity idea. And then from a technical perspective, from the outside, the boundaries of the team or the boundaries of the service, that's an abstraction and encapsulation boundary, right? So it allows us to have failures that happen, within that area, but hopefully are isolated and don't escape out to, the rest of the world. It allows the individual service or application team to choose the optimal technology stack, or at least they have the possibility to choose a particular technology stack for their use that maybe is more appropriate for their use than for others. We can do performance optimizations within that boundary, caching, et cetera. And then also, very importantly, it's a security boundary. So anybody who's operated software at large scale and having compliance, regulatory things, you want to make sure that you keep those security boundaries as small and as tight and as separate as possible to make your life easier. So, and the other aspect from a technical perspective is that we want to have a strict interface discipline around that boundary, right? So we want to have a well-defined API contract, a well-defined interface contract. As we iterate on the implementation and on the interface, we want it to be both forward and backward compatible. And if we do that, it allows that service or that application unit to be testable and mockable. It also allows all of our dependencies similarly to be testable and mockable, because with that well-defined contract, we can mock this service out and other people can, test against that mock. And over time, of course, like you're going to, companies start with a small number of domains or services. And then over time, what I've seen is that they tend to split and divide like cellular mitosis, right? So you start with one cell, divides into two daughter cells, each divide into two daughter cells, et cetera, et cetera. And each of those cells tend to specialize into, I don't know, an arm or an eye or hair follicle or something like that. Cool. And just as a leadership goal for myself, it's like I want to make sure that 80% of the project work is within those team boundaries. And if it's substantially less than that, then I should probably, as a leader, think about trying to redraw those team boundaries so there's a lot more autonomy. Cool. So that was locality and simplicity, thought of both from an organizational perspective and from a kind of architectural and technical perspective. Now I want to talk about focus, flow, and joy. And I want to talk about that from a team perspective and from an individual perspective. So Steve Jobs, always good for the quote, do not try to do everything, do one thing well. And that's, I think, an excellent admonishment or suggestion for individuals as well as for teams. So the way I like to phrase it in terms of organizational structure and team dynamics is I want to make sure that teams do fewer things, but they get more done. And so I often use this diagram because I find it really, really helpful. So a lot of individual teams or team leaders will have 5 people, and they'll have obviously more than 5 things to do. And to the earlier point made by Mary and Tom Poppendick in the earlier thing, you have lots of priorities. And a lot of people will do this. They'll like, oh, well, we have, you give one person top priority, the first priority thing, the second person, the second priority thing, et cetera, et cetera. But then look at how long it takes, to get anything actually completed. A better way to think about it is, what if we started on a smaller number of things, put more people against them, and got them actually done? So in this made up example, we're getting the top 2 priorities done, in half the time than we otherwise would. Can we do better than this? I actually think we can. If we think about it not as one monolithic, release at the, in this made up example, 2-month boundary, what if we thought about dividing up our individual releases or deployments to customers into smaller chunks of smaller, more kind of bite-sized units of customer value? Then we can be delivering incremental value along the way and learning from those things, right? So maybe we need to do more than we thought originally, or maybe we need to do less, or maybe this experiment isn't working and we can, stop it and do something else. All of the, what you're seeing is we're basically like deriving agile development from first principles. But the reason why this actually works is because it gives us option value, and it also makes us resilient to this. So oftentimes as an engineering leader or as an engineer, I've been doing my work and I'm almost all the way done with this big waterfall, situation. And then we have a change in priorities. This happens all the time. And if you have not released incrementally along the way, all that, 3/4 or 7/8 of the work that you've done, never reaches customers and is a complete waste of time. In fact, we should have gone on vacation instead of doing it. So instead, if we release things incrementally in smaller bite-sized chunks, even if we have to switch priorities, we've at least produced customer value along the way and learned stuff. So that's talking about focus, flow, and joy from a team perspective. Now let's talk about it from an individual perspective. And this quote from Richard Feynman, Nobel Prize winner, and raconteur: if you're not having fun, you're not learning. And there's a pleasure in finding things out. This is the joy part, right? So like when we're actually doing stuff and achieving things and learning things, that's actually fun. Like a lot of people, like that's why they actually got into this career in the first place. It's certainly why I got into it. Is I love learning new things and iterating on stuff and providing value. But more generally, I want to talk about flow. And of course, this is the famous Hungarian psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, who has a wonderful book about flow. What is flow for an individual? So flow is the state where you're in the zone. right? So, this happens for athletes, this happens for programmers, this happens for writers or poets, almost any discipline of human work. You have this experience. You can have this experience of flow, and you want to get into that flow as much as possible. So, what is the flow state? It's immediate feedback. It's this feeling of power and effortless and ease, a feeling of control, and also critically, a balance between the challenge that you have and the skills that you have to bring to that challenge. One of the things that we can do as managers and team leaders is help make it possible, give individual engineers and individual contributors the opportunity to get into that flow state. And so maybe people are familiar with this blog post way back in, I think it was 2003 by Paul Graham of Y Combinator, kind of a complicated guy. Don't agree with all the things he says, but this blog post is excellent. So he talks about the maker schedule versus the manager schedule. So the maker schedule ideally should look like this. Maybe there's a meeting of a stand-up of your team in the morning, and then like a whole bunch of uninterrupted work time. Maybe there's a meeting sometime in the middle of the day and then uninterrupted work time. So this would be the ideal maker schedule. This is my personal schedule. It is meeting Tetris with half-an-hour blocks. And for me as a leader, it doesn't matter for me what order those things come in. Like my day is always like meeting, trying to help, other people be more productive. And unfortunately, not doing individual contributor work anymore. This is not itself a problem. The problem is when I, as a leader, impose my horrible manager schedule on the makers. So if I call a one-on-one with one of my individual contributors at like 10:30 in the morning, boom, I've just destroyed her entire morning, right? Because she can't get into flow, for the first whatever hour and a half. She doesn't have much time to get into flow, after that meeting. So I have to be very, very cognizant as a leader about trying to schedule meetings with individual contributors, which I do want to have at the beginning of the day, the middle of the day, at the end of the day, and really trying to make sure that individual contributors have that flow time in order to really get deeply into a problem, solve it before being interrupted. One of the ways that we can protect flow time, or many of the ways that we can protect flow time, are outlined in this excellent book by Dominica de Grandis called Making Work Visible. So again, as I've suggested, one of the many things she suggests in this excellent book is putting meetings at those break times, as I was suggesting, encouraging culturally within your team, setting up do not disturb and, Slack or whatever, chat mechanism that you use. Like it's okay. It needs to be affirmatively okay for people to say, I am heads down doing work. Please don't disturb me unless it's an absolute emergency. And then for individuals, consciously managing the interrupts that they have. And then from a team and sort of improvement perspective, try to look at in a scientific way, what are all the reasons that my developers are getting interrupted, and automate them away or define them away in terms of, putting meetings at different places. Cool. So as Albert Einstein likes to say, it wasn't that he was so smart. It's just that he stayed with problems longer. So that's kind of another way of saying is what he was able to make, the incredible scientific, strides forward that he did, general relativity, special relativity, the photoelectric effect, all those things that, he was the one that came up with essentially. Why? Because he was able to stay in flow. Okay. So we talked about locality and simplicity, focus, flow, and joy. Now let's talk about improvement of daily work. So the mind-blowing insight by Gene Kim, who is the author of this book and so many others, is this incredibly insightful and counterintuitive idea that improving daily work is even more important than doing daily work. And you're like, what? My whole purpose in life is doing the daily work. Like that's what I produce features. Like that's the goal. But if you make investments on making it easier to do this feature and also the next feature and the next feature and the next feature and the next feature, that investment pays off in a compounding way, just like compounding interest in finance. That investment can often be a better investment than typing one more feature. So improving daily work can be even more important than doing daily work. So let's think about that idea in terms of technical debt. So probably a lot of us have had this experience. I certainly have it at some places that I've worked where we do it the other way, where we do compounding debt as opposed to compounding investment. So we do something quick and dirty. We accumulate some technical debt. Next time around, we don't have time to do the next thing right. So we do the next thing quick and dirty. We accumulate more technical debt. We have no time to do it right, et cetera. Round and round and round in this vicious cycle of technical debt. But the insight about improving daily work is we want to get ourselves out of this cycle and get ourselves into this cycle, a virtuous cycle of investment or improvement. So we make a quality investment, and it can be a small thing. Let's improve the build time from 10 minutes to 5 minutes, or 5 minutes to 2 minutes, or 1 hour to 30 minutes. Make some one improvement that is toward a goal that we like. We have a more solid foundation on which to iterate. That gives us more confidence. We can get faster and better, which actually frees up more time from our daily work in order to potentially invest in improved testing or improved automation or improved developer life. And we can make that investment. We can get a better foundation, more confidence, faster and better, et cetera, et cetera. And the high performing teams that are right now like accelerating away from the pack, they've got this idea. They're thinking, how do we make these small incremental investments in making our life improved, and then recouping those investments and leveraging those investments, doubling down on those investments and making more investments going forward. And that doesn't mean not doing daily work, but it means thinking in a first order way as a leader about how can I improve the ability of my teams to do daily work. Okay, well, so a lot of you at this point are saying, well, my organization would never let me do this. Like the product people, the business people, all they want is features. Like they would never let me do this. So I'll give you a couple of words that you can say that often can help with this. And these 5 words are, let's just try and experiment. These are so powerful, these 5 words, because a lot of, it might be difficult for you to prove without doing it that adding these automated tests or improving the CI/CD pipeline will improve our ability to deliver software. Like you might believe that, and you're probably right, but it might be hard to prove. So without doing it. So one of the great things that you can do, one of the nice little judo pivots, judo moves here is say, hey, let's just try and experiment. Hey, what if I spend a little bit of time, invest in this, and then we'll see if it makes our lives better. And often it will. So this is my suggestion. By the way, this experimentation idea was also talked about by Mary and Tom Popendick in the last thing. So you'll see lots of thematic similarities. When you want to make larger investments in terms of technical debt reduction, as I often have gotten to do and have had to do as an engineering leader at Google and Stitch Fix and eBay and other places, the way to frame that vicious cycle is not to say, the code is getting inelegant, and that is making my developers unhappy. That's probably true, but that is not a good argument. An argument is because what you're doing is you're asking the product and business people to trade off an investment in improvement of daily work versus an investment in features. And so the features are hopefully going to give us some time or some money rather. And so you need to use a common currency. So you need to either say, hey, these improvement investments are going to improve our time to deliver. They're going to improve the number of people that it takes us to deliver. They're actually going to give us money or make us not lose money because better customer experience, people won't leave, or fewer outages or something like that. My point here, though, is that in order to have this conversation in a principled way between should we invest in features or should we invest in improvement in daily work, you need to have a common currency that you can compare in a principled way. So one of the things that I've found over and over again at several different companies, the way to have this conversation as a senior engineering leader is not to argue onesie-twosie about individual improvements. Like that's not usually the level at which the conversation is useful with your product and business counterparts, but instead have a conversation at the kind of executive or leadership level about what level of resource investments are we willing to make upfront in terms of into improvements of daily work, what people call engineering excellence, technical debt reduction. I've seen lots of operational excellence. There's lots of phrases for this general idea. And, as a rule of thumb, most high-performing companies in the steady state are dedicating, say, 25, maybe 30% of their engineering efforts toward this thing. And the way I've seen it work, having those conversations up front at the leadership level are really good conversations. And I've always found those conversations very, very valuable. And they usually end up with what I want to get out of it, which is good. But the other thing is how we actually do this in practice. So again, as I mentioned, the way I say it is this. I say, you need to trust me to make the right investments in the engineering teams around how to spend this 25 to 30%. So that's the autonomy. You need to give me the autonomy to figure out what are the right investments to do. And I'm going to run a bunch of experiments and take a bunch of ideas from lots of people. But I don't want to debate onesie twosie what those things are. However, I will provide you full transparency on what I'm doing and why. And if that makes you or them feel uncomfortable, then one of the things I've had to do several times is say, look, if you didn't trust me to spend this investment wisely, you shouldn't have hired me. Or maybe more nicely, like, exactly the reason you hired me is because I have the experience to make these kind of investments. And maybe you could have the same conversation too. I've definitely said that kind of phrase more than once in my career. So retain autonomy, provide full transparency to what and why you're doing and what the results are. Like, some experiments are going to work and some aren't. Cool. The next thing I want to talk about here is this very new idea that I just learned from Gene Kim on his Idealcast podcast, this idea of the technical or the technological maestro. And so one of the insights that Ron Westrom of the organizational culture area has learned or shared recently, maybe he's known it for a long time, is this idea that high-performing organizations tend to be led by somebody who's very competent in technology. And it doesn't mean that person needs to be typing, but it does mean that person needs to be high energy. They need to be able to ask the right questions. So even if they're not able to do all the work today, maybe they used to do it, but certainly they have enough familiarity with the overall situation. They can ask the right questions, pinpoint where there are bottlenecks and where there are issues, et cetera. They have high standards. So that is so critical that as a leader, you set the bar really high about, we're going to have a really low defect rate. We're going to have a really high iteration rate. These kinds of things where, like, setting really high standards for the team can be really valuable and can be really motivating, actually, for a lot of the engineers who really want to do a good job in their craft. And then critical that this maestro be good on the details, right? So Ron Westrom tells a lot of stories about Apple and other places, for example, where you'll have senior leaders that are able to dive 1, 2, 3 levels deep. And what I'm not saying is micromanagement, but what I'm saying is having enough familiarity with what's going on, the context, and trade-offs, and what are the things that we're able to do to be able to ask the right questions and kind of make good suggestions to people. So again, this is a kind of really new, hot off the presses idea for me, but and for Gene, but it's so evocative and so familiar. This idea, it's so analogous to our experience that the really great companies and organizations all happen to be led by people that at least have engineering backgrounds or are able to ask these kind of questions. Great. And so this quote is one that Ron Westrom quotes a guy named Jacob Rabinow in his Laws of Leadership back in, I think, the 40s or the 50s. So please excuse the sexist language that comes out of the 1940s, but think about the idea here. If the person at the top is a dope or ignorant, everybody under that person is soon going to be a dope or ignorant, because that person sets the tone. Right? This is the goal. This is the idea of the technological maestro, that the person at the top should be setting high standards, helping people, be a servant, but really understand what they're doing as opposed to just being a functionary. Okay. The other thing I want to talk about here is incentives. And, this is something that the technological maestro and leadership should be doing. So people maybe are familiar with this quote, Hanlon's razor: never ascribe to malice what can be adequately explained by incompetence. Here's my corollary to that. Never ascribe to incompetence what can adequately be explained by perverse incentives. And so one of the things that the maestro should be doing is setting the right standards and making sure that people have the incentives to do the right thing rather than to do the wrong thing. Okay. So now let's talk about psychological safety. So people, I hope at this point, in our engineering leadership careers, have at least heard the phrase psychological safety. A lot of us have been talking about it a lot for the last couple of years. So people maybe are familiar that Google, being Google, studied themselves. They did what they called Project Aristotle, where their problem statement was, what differentiates high-performing teams at Google from low-performing teams? And you can imagine that they had a bunch of hypotheses like, the team that had the most experience at Google, the most industry experience, the fanciest universities that they went went to. None of that stuff mattered at all, it turns out. What did matter more than anything else was psychological safety. So what does that mean? It means that the team is safe for interpersonal risk-taking. Or another way to frame it that Amy Edmondson, the psychologist that came up with this idea of psychological safety, is this: felt permission for candor. So as an individual, do I feel permission to be transparent? So candor, like being open and transparent and straightforward. More or less, can I tell the truth without being punished? And if that is true, then you're going to have a great team. And if that is not true, you need to solve that problem. And there are lots of reasons why that might be true. Issues of not being respectful of other people's diverse perspectives, et cetera, fear, fear-based culture. But the high-performing teams are the ones where everybody's able to bring their entire brain to work and not feel fear for potentially saying the truth. And again, this was more important than any other factor in team success. And again, the insight here is everybody's bringing their full self to work and everybody's contributing all of their ideas rather than holding them back. Okay, the other related idea here is this idea of inclusive decision-making. And there was a great study back in 2016 that showed each incremental amount of diversity that we add to a decision-making group incrementally makes our decision-making better. So if you add geographic diversity, age diversity, and gender diversity, that team is going to make better business decisions 87% of the time. And oh, by the way, they're going to make those decisions twice as fast with half the meetings, and they're going to deliver 60% business results. That was the end of this. That was the study if you had all three of those flavors of diversity. But if you had one, you were making better decisions like 60% of the time. And if you had two of them, you were making them like 70% of the time. So like every incremental more diversity that we have in terms of decision making, the better and better decisions that we're actually going to make. And again, within the context of psychological safety, people are able to speak the truth. This gives you better business results. Okay, and the overall insight here obviously is comes from this Japanese proverb as quoted by Bob Taylor, who ran the Xerox PARC research labs for many years. None of us is as smart as all of us. Okay. So last thing I want to talk about here is blameless postmortems. So when something bad happens, because something bad will happen, software's hard, we want to have an open and honest discussion afterward, be able to be very open about, yeah, that broke and, here's how we're going to fix it. We need to take a systems thinking approach on like what went wrong, what went right, and what are opportunities for improvement in terms of like detecting issues, diagnosing them, mitigating them, remediating them, et cetera. And then if you're able to do this in a psychologically safe manner, what I found is engineers are almost like competing to take responsibility. Well, you think what you guys were doing was bad, like we weren't even taking backups and our replication wasn't working. And, why would anybody say those things? Like, why would they feel good about that? This is the place in the engineer's heart where that comes from. Finally, we can prioritize fixing that broken system, right? So I'm sure every one of us as an engineer has had this kind of idea. I certainly had this feeling where I really wish we didn't have that incident. Like it makes me sad and, not good. It doesn't make me feel good that we had customer impacting event. But now finally, we're going to be able to prioritize fixing these things that I've been, saying have been broken for a long, long time. Okay. So let's talk about the last one, which is customer focus. So the hugely critical idea here is to focus on outcomes for customers rather than output of our individual teams. Like honestly, it doesn't matter whether we released a feature. What does matter is have we moved customer and business metrics in a way that we want. So as engineering leaders, we want to think about the business outcomes just as much as the product and business folks. So we want to understand very clearly, well, what are we trying to achieve as a business? Are we trying to grow revenue? Are we trying to grow profit? Are we trying to improve our market share? Are we trying to reduce customer churn? All those kinds of things are like, we kind of need to understand that as engineering leaders if we're going to, solve those problems. And then we want to have at the kind of slightly lower level than that, we need to have a deep understanding of like how customers are actually using our software. So what are the performance like of the key customer flows? So in eBay, like what is the there's a funnel of like people searching for things and bidding on them and buying them and, getting them. And there's a funnel of things that are around trying to sell an item and going through the listing process. And, so all these things are things that, we should be tracking. And the reverse of that, at least at eBay, is a phrase that we call failed customer interaction. So this is something that we've been starting to do relatively recently of really understanding in a detailed way where the customers weren't able to complete, the thing that they were trying to do. One thing that we have been doing very well for 20 years or so is the deeper like availability to business. So the way we phrase the like operational availability metrics is not in terms of uptime and downtime of individual systems. We phrase it in terms of how much revenue have we impacted by this event, right? So like we have a transfer function about like what parts of the system do what things. And so we talk about availability to business, and we frame that in terms of actual business outcomes. So like when we had this event, what revenue essentially did we lose? And we use that as a way of prioritizing what things we need to fix in what order. Okay, so the other, I asked you to remember 5 words before. If I can ask you to remember 7 more, it's what problem are we trying to solve? And this very much dovetails with, the Q&A after Mary and Tom's talk. Why do we care so much about framing the problem? Well, the first reason is it's going to make it a lot easier to solve it. So I love this quote from Charles Kettering: "A problem well stated is a problem half solved." And almost everybody in engineering, has had this experience where you're not quite sure how to solve it, but mostly that's because we haven't like fully specified the problem. When you're very clear on the problem, it starts to become very clear how you can attack it, or at least it starts to become very clear where you should experiment to see if you can solve the problem. But the other thing, and I'm going to quote Mary and Tom, shamelessly right here from their excellent book, Lean Software Development: "Building the wrong thing is the biggest waste in software development." So they outline 7 wastes. The number 1 waste is building the wrong thing. Well, why would people build the wrong thing? It's because they didn't understand the problem that they were solving from the beginning. And so there's lots of other wastes, doing things inefficiently, et cetera. But there's only one waste, which is like 100% waste. And this is it, right? Like if you build the wrong thing, you should have just gone on vacation, right? So you should really be understanding the customer problem, living the customer experience, having empathy in order to figure out what your problems are and then, solve them in a very direct way. Okay. And as I like to say, engineering is about solving problems, and only sometimes do we solve those problems by writing code. When I was the engineering leader at Stitch Fix, it's a physical business where we had physical warehouses, and one of my teams built software for the warehouse folks that would run the warehouse. And a bunch of times we would have conversations with them, and they would say, "Hey, can you like make these changes to the application?" And we'd say, "Okay, sure, we can do that, but like let's chat a little bit of what you're trying to achieve." And a lot of times, as we went through that process, that kind of like rubber duck debugging of the process, we would find that actually changes in the physical structure of the assembly line or changes in the work process might be a more efficient and effective way of attacking the problem than writing new software. And that's what we provide as our engineering, discipline and mindset. Okay, so we talked about locality and simplicity. We talked about focus, flow, and joy. We talked about improvement of daily work. We talked about psychological safety, and we talked about customer focus. Again, I strongly recommend that you read The Unicorn Project. It's a wonderful novel about IT. But if any of these things don't feel familiar, if any of those things, like I could never do these things in my organization, it's way too, bureaucratic or way too yucky. Well, first try to change the organization, because just like people, organizations can change. But if you've tried that and it hasn't worked, well, then I have this wonderful quote from Martin Fowler, which is, "If you can't change your organization, you can change your organization." Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Randy. I'm going to have to take this video and rewatch all of this. There's so much good information in there. We got a couple of questions here. There's a question from Balaj. He says, "My friend leads a visual design team for complex internal software, and the lead product manager is challenging almost every design her team produces. Do you think this improves anything?"
Obviously, there's a lot of context behind that situation that I don't have. Mary made a wonderful point in the Q&A after her talk, which is we don't actually have to have consensus around what we do. We have to have consensus around what problem we're solving and what customer metrics we're trying to move. Look, I mean, what you're talking about is probably a pathological situation, if I'm honest, but I don't know enough to say. It's not wrong to have discussions about those things, but if we're finding that we have fundamental disagreements about everything, there is a bigger and deeper problem going on. I don't know what that is in this situation, but there's a fundamental cultural or maybe personality situation that's going on there that needs to be addressed. And maybe the only way to address that is by bringing some kind of outside force, outside mediator, or, you know, because this is like, if this is like a clash of equals, like you got to resolve it by like somebody who they both are kind of reporting to, if that makes any sense. Those are my
third party that is involved in the decision. Yeah, correct.
Yeah, and I think you have to ask. I mean, and if it's psychologically safe, and it may not be in this situation, it's legit to ask why. Like, why are we disagreeing on everything? And hopefully, you know, that conversation will spur. You know, hopefully we'll learn something of that conversation, and we can fix it.
Yeah, I think Mary also mentioned the conflicts between like tasks and relationships, right? And there's like these two types there that can be conflicting. If it is a personality thing, then yeah, maybe a third party can help. And asking the why will definitely start peeling that, right?
And actually, can I, sorry to interrupt you. Yeah. This is a great place to deploy Shoup's corollary, because this is so many, again, I have no context about this thing, but often when there are seemingly fundamental disagreements between like two organizations or two people, if you take a step back, it's probably because of misaligned incentives. This person, I'm making this up, this design person is incented to do something, and this product person, maybe in this example, I forget, is incented to do some other thing. And that conflict needs to be resolved, right? And that's typically, that's a leadership opportunity. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And it's kind of like, yeah, maybe they're not aligned in the one true goal, right?
It's common. It's more common than uncommon, frankly, particularly in large organizations, to have completely, you know, the classic dev and ops, this isn't this case, but like the classic dev and ops were like, dev is incented to produce features. Ops is incented to keep everything stable. You've made them, you know, by definition, clash and hate each other. Whereas if you pop a level up and it's like, we're actually all on the same team about driving customer improvement and moving the business metrics in the right way. So maybe we should spend some availability in order to get, you know, faster velocity. I mean, like, these are conversations you can only have when everybody has aligned incentives.
True. There's another question here. Is there a good way to find out early if we're building the wrong thing, i.e. evaluate that we understood the customer's problem properly?
Yes. Oh, what a lovely question. Experiment. So the first thing that came to my mind was, you know, no surprise, same thing Mary said, is run an experiment. And like, don't complete the feature before a customer ever sees it. Maybe you can show it to people, like try to figure out a way to iterate your way to, you know, being done. I'm a little skeptical about the done part, but you see what I mean? Like, find incremental ways of providing value along the way. That's something you can do. But something that you can do even earlier is paper prototypes, right? So, you know, a classic user experience technique, which works all the time and is super lightweight, is sketching out, and I'm terrible at this myself, but like, you know, somebody who's really good, like, here's what we think the interaction should look like. Does this look good? And you can, that's so lightweight, and it literally takes a piece of paper, and do that with a candidate customer. Like, probably not your engineers, like if you're not users of this product, you know, but find somebody who's a trusted user of your thing. You know, a persona essentially matches one of your, you know, personas, and say, does this interaction or does this feature make sense? And the more lighter weight and frequent you can make those iterations, the more quickly you're going to learn, right? And so you can, all those things I said are also like additive on each other, right? So you can start with paper prototypes. People are like, yeah, that sounds good. But then once you have like a little bit of working software, show that to them, and, oh, okay, well, you know, no, that was bad. Like, I told you that looked good, but now that I see it in real life, no, there's a better way to do it, and that doesn't make sense to me. And, you know, so, you know, leverage those people as much as possible. So how do you know that you're solving the customer problem? It's by asking her.
There you go. So another question that came in, it's hard for our product owners to specify clear metrics. How can I, as a developer, help them to it?
Yeah, that's a great one. Usually, well, I mean, you can give them suggestions. So you don't say, "Hey, can we?" Sometimes people aren't good at, "Hey, I need some." You say, hey, "I need some metrics."
Yeah,
And they're
exactly.
like, I don't really know what you mean. But we could suggest some, like, I mean, make it a conversation more than something else. I mean, that would be the first thing I would say is, hey, I see that we don't have any metrics that measure whether customers are using this feature. What if we, and you could even offer, like, what if we instrumented how long it takes the customer, customers from starting this flow till they end this flow? Does that seem like a reasonable, proxy for this? And then they're like, oh yeah, but that misses the fact that they might drop off at any of these 4 steps. And you're like, great, okay, we can instrument that. Like, there are 4 steps in our like pipeline or our little funnel here, and I could instrument each of those steps. Does that sound good? And again, use the let's try and experiment kind of thing. Like, let's just put that into practice. I mean, like, hopefully in almost any place we work, like, instrumenting one of those things is not outrageously difficult. And then you start collecting that information, and then you can learn. One thing you might learn is it's the wrong metric. But another thing you might learn is it's good, but it's not detailed enough. That's almost the most common case, right?
Yeah.
And you just get started, right? Like, how do you get from, how do you eat an elephant 1 bite at a time, right? Like, you just, start one thing, and and okay, well, but that's not enough metrics. We also need to make sure that people getting through the flow, but we also want to make sure that they don't, I'm making this up, like, drop off for other reasons, or, that so you'll just keep adding those, customer metrics and instrumentation along the way, and just getting more and more insights into your customers.
Yeah, and I think I actually done this in the past where I just have the customer conversation with my PO, right? I ask them, hey, what do we know about the customer? Do we know about X? What do we know about Y? And then you could start getting the interest of the product owner, like, that's actually pretty good. We should know this. So then you're like, well, yeah, I could get the team to get us some metrics to answer this question. Would that be useful? And then from there, like you said, it just keeps growing and growing. And
kind of that's great, Jose. I love it. And the way that you just did it was a very collaborative conversation. So another way to do what you just did, which I don't recommend, is you don't know anything about our customers. Prove to me that this feature is going to move customer metrics in the right way.
Yeah.
They're like, they get their back up, and they're, well, we did all this design stuff, and like, I know how the customer is. You're just an engineer. Like, the way that you had the conversation gets you to the same place, but it's like way more collaborative, and like, hey, I can offer, like, legit, I don't feel like I fully understand, the flow and when people are dropping off. Like, wouldn't it be useful for us to add some instrumentation? I could do that, and it wouldn't be too difficult. Should we do that? And it's kind of hard to say no to that. And then you'll learn.
Yeah, totally. We have another one. Any good ideas about the need for maker schedules with lots of flow time versus the need to communicate a lot on an innovative team?
Yeah, that's great. All these things are balanced, right? So there are lots of groups and lots of phases of a life cycle of a group where the work is, where the real work is actually collaborative a lot of the time. So what I said was, take it with a grain of salt. But like, if as an individual contributor, if the biggest value I can provide is like doing my deep individual contributor work, then that particular maker schedule that I suggested would work really well. But it's not an either or. You could absolutely imagine that, I'm making this up, mornings we collaborate, afternoons we work heads down. Or lots of companies have like a no meeting, Tuesday, or no meeting Wednesday, or something like that. The thing that does not work is the half and half, right? You know what, Randy, like, you're really supposed to be doing a lot of deep individual contributor work, but we're going to have all these meetings, and they're going to be randomly dispersed throughout your day. So the key is not meetings are bad. The key is everything's a trade-off, and a meeting is by definition, interruption of my individual work. And so how can I maximize my ability to do individual work while also getting the benefit of meeting and collaborating with my colleagues? It's bounding those things, in their own areas. And in particular, it is hard. This is obvious, but it's best to do this as like a team agreement as opposed to an individual agreement.
Mm-hmm.
You follow me? Like, it's a little bit harder for, like, if I were an individual contributor, and I'm sad that I'm not anymore. If I just said, I'm not going to take any meetings in the afternoon, like that might be a problem for people. But if we all collectively agree, you know what, we're going to cram all of our meetings together, collaboration in the morning, and then all of us are going to have, 2 to 3 hours of flow time or whatever we can, spare or whatever in the afternoon, and we do it all together, then it's super easy.
Yeah.
And goes from there. And then I'm not even addressing the like pair programming kind of idea of collaboration, which to my mind, like actually fits
into the
maker work. But
yeah.
I'm really more drawing the differentiation between individual contributor engineering deep thought work versus not that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, Randy, thank you so much.